All right. Hi, Amy.
Hi, what's up, Coach?
Coach. You still call me Coach after all these years. Amy and I were together for many years in the school system as I was her physical therapist, and she helped me when I was coaching a middle school volleyball team one season.
That was one of my first experiences with being able to interact with the general education population without any barriers, without any aids. So I think that's where I started calling her Coach, and it just never left.
That's neat. Yeah. We had, and I was very thankful for you because you remembered lots of little details of things that I was too frazzled to remember.
Yeah, we were busy trying to manage a team. I remember I always ran around with all the water containers with one of my friends.
Yes, yeah, that was nice for you to be able to do that for us, and yeah, just keeping track of who was there and who wasn't, and what I had said to one person and not to the other.
It felt like I was a second set of ears and eyes, and I just had to really make sure that I wasn't getting in the way of any balls,
Yes,
so that I wouldn't have to call mine.
Yeah, mine.
I can't really set a ball very well, so
which, yes, we were making sure that you were free of any being at the spike end of any balls. There's a big bird flying around. I don't think that's an eagle, but it sure is a big, big bird. Sometimes we see eagles flying around here, so it might have been.
cool.
So Amy, so we got together so we could do a video. We originally had thought to do this for National Physical Therapy Month, since I'm a physical therapist and you were a recipient of physical therapy for many years.
For many years, in fact, I still am. In fact, I just came from physical therapy.
Oh, you did?
Just-
What are you seeing a physical therapist for at this point?
So I'm doing some of the same stuff that we did when I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
but just in a different setting.
Is this the gym setting?
Yeah.
The
So
adapted gym setting, yeah.
this is the adapted gym. So this is a physical therapy center, basically, but in the form of a gym,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes it a lot easier than having to say, hey, I'm going to physical therapy. I just tell people I'm going to the gym, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But I
But
mean,
yeah, I mean,
it works.
every body needs exercise.
yep.
Yeah. So I've been to that gym. It's a really cool place. Remind me of the name of it?
It's called Ability Fitness, and
That's
it's
right. In Leesburg.
in Leesburg.
Yes, and a physical therapist is running that place. And so what are some of your favorite things to do there? Remind me of that one, the PT's name. I'm sorry.
So her name, the PT name over there is Helen Parker, and
Yes.
she is a neuro PT.
She is. Yeah.
So
Hi,
um,
Helen. In case you watch this someday, I'm sorry I forgot your name,
So
but I remember meeting you.
over there, I do a lot of stuff with the Eastern unit,
Okay. Yeah.
and a lot of passive active range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff to try and fix my subluxation,
Of your hip.
yes, and my
Yeah.
tightness in my TFL.
Yes. Okay. Do you get on the bike and do like passive or passive
Yes.
active pedaling?
Partly, yeah. I also have a bike that I use at home.
Oh, great.
That I happen to do 2.8 miles on
No.
at one point.
Oh, in one day?
Yeah.
Nice.
I rode up to the middle school.
Oh, fantastic. So is that similar to the bike that we had at Farmwell Station, or at what school? Was it at Farmwell that we had that bike for you and we would go out around the track?
Yeah, so we would. It's similar to that one. It's a Freedom Concept bike.
Right, okay, I remember that. Good. Okay, so getting back to my question, what is your favorite exercise to do when you go to Ability Fitness Center?
Probably, so my favorite piece of equipment is the new step, but I'm trying to think my favorite exercise or stretch is when they do passive myofascial release on the inside of my leg, just because that still gets really super tight.
Okay. So that's more of a passive treatment that you find to be very helpful and relaxing, and it feels good, probably.
Yeah, and then they also do some neck extensions.
Oh, good. Yeah, we had talked about that. In fact, that's the last time I saw you, as I came to your house to see if we could figure out why your neck was bothering you.
Yeah, my neck it still flares up,
Okay.
but
So do the neck extensions feel good?
they feel good.
Okay.
My neck is just my neck.
Yeah.
I think it comes from years and years of uncontrollable hyperextension, and sometimes it can really bug me.
Oh, yeah. Because it's getting pulled in a direction that you don't necessarily want it to.
Yeah, so I get annoyed at myself for like why I let it happen for so long without trying to control it.
Well, so tell me more about that. What do you think you should be doing to control it?
So I wish I could force it to go in the other direction.
Like down?
Yeah, instead of having to all the way back.
Yeah.
But I can do it sometimes, but I have to be extremely, extremely cognitive and keep it in my mind. It's like if you're trying to do an exercise, it's basically, for me, this neck thing is not really an exercise. It's more about breaking a habit that I'm not able to control.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just having to be completely cognizant of where I'm putting my neck and when I'm putting it there.
Well, and for you, that involves having a low stress situation, right? Because when you're in a higher stress situation, your muscle tone increases, and then it pulls things into places that you don't necessarily want them to go.
Or not talking. So I've learned over time that the muscle contractions that I get that throw me into the hyperextension is mostly when I'm trying to get thoughts out.
Right. But you're such a good speaker, and we all want to hear what you have to say.
Being a public speaker, doing videos like this is one of my biggest passions.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get me to be quiet.
Yeah. I know that. Well, so it's a balance, right? It's a balance just like anything in life, and that's so true. I mean, I spend so much of my time now that I'm not working in the school system helping people to understand the balance of, sitting and working at a computer all day. Like, you need to take breaks during that time frame and move your body in opposite directions, which is pretty much what you're talking about here in a different context.
So some of it is with this virtual learning. I'm hearing so many people telling me I'm so tired of sitting.
Yeah, I hear that too.
I'm like, okay, because I don't have that choice.
That's interesting. So how does that make you feel? Like, how do you respond to that?
It depends how I'm feeling that day. Sometimes it makes me kind of, in a sense, like mad.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know that some people's schedules don't give them the choice, but I'm like, you guys have the choice to find a way to use your biomechanics
Exactly.
to aerodynamically figure out your office space enough that you won't have to be in this pain. Whereas before, when I was in school, oftentimes we had certain tools that we could use, but there wasn't a whole lot of movement that I could do without having to be transferred.
Right. Well, Amy, that's such a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, that, you know, many of us that are not in a wheelchair have the option and the choice, as you said, to get up and move out of the sitting position. So we probably shouldn't be complaining about the fact that we're having to sit so much.
I mean, I know it's hard. And that's the other thing. People always say it's so hard to sit. And I'm like, I know. And that's why it takes PTs and other therapists to work as a team with people like me to assist us in figuring out how to normalize our life.
Yeah. And to be able to get out of the sitting position and move your body in other directions. Yeah.
It's really important that if you do have the option to work with a PT and have a PT train your caregivers or your assistants in school even,
Yes.
how to handle us properly so we don't get hurt.
That is so important. And we ran into that because I worked with Amy from the time she was in 5th grade through to her graduation. And we walked across the stage together. And we went through a number of different caregiver situations in the school system. And so, every time there was a new caregiver, we had to go through the training process, which is very, very important.
It felt at some points in my life in school, in some parts of my academic life, more specifically in high school, that every 6 months I was training a new aide. And to be blunt, I'm out of that situation now. Luckily, I'm able to have consistent care.
Yes.
But it's really, really tough. And the advice that I would give anyone who's listening, who's in that, is the skills that you will learn by teaching other people how to handle you will carry all the way up until now.
Oh my
Because
gosh. Yeah.
I'm still teaching. In fact, I've gone into a couple caregiving agencies and helped them understand what it's like to live life in a wheelchair. And if I didn't have that foundation of knowing how to teach, here's the other thing: know your anatomy and physiology if you can.
Yes.
Because that's gonna come in handy too, because you're gonna have PTs that are like, what's wrong? But if you can allow yourself to be like, my TFL is tight and I can't move my hip because it subluxes, they're gonna respect you a whole lot more than if you just point to something and say, this hurts.
Yeah. Do you remember when you were worried and getting nervous about an upcoming hip surgery, and I brought in my anatomy book, and we
That
looked?
changed my life. I was on my stomach and you were like, let's look at this book, and I'm like, Coach? What are you trying to tell me how to do?
What are you doing to me?
Some of it I still remember, because some of it I use every day. In fact, when I talk to people and they are like, what hurts, I'm able to use it. But also I have people that come in completely untrained and I'm like, this hurts, and I use the technical term and they look at me like,
How do you know that?
what in the world? I'm like, okay,
That's awesome.
move it this way. Like,
Wow. Well, that makes me feel so wonderful that made an impact on you from, that was back in middle school.
yeah, and I
You were
think,
probably, 13?
yeah,
Yeah.
and some of our viewers of this video may have seen a lot of, I have some videos out about anatomy and physiology just because that is so important to understand.
Yeah. Well, that and for people that are in wheelchairs, they probably get more out of hearing that from you than from some of us able-bodied people, because you have the perspective that the rest of us might not have.
And that's okay. So I, as someone in a wheelchair, can speak to what it's like to live life as someone in a wheelchair, which is different than having a PT just be like, hey, move this.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna go, but that hurts.
Yeah.
And it's also really nice and really cool to have a PT that we can call that we trust. Because if I did not have that, I probably wouldn't be as into it as I am. I probably wouldn't be as comfortable explaining it to people.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that just comes from, if anything happened when I was in school, I remember telling people, do not lift me unless coach is here. Because
Yeah.
I
I felt more comfortable being there too, I have to tell you.
I needed to be safe. And
Yeah.
I think for many, many times I said to myself, how in the world am I able to get through this? Because there was so much inconsistent, but as long as you have that one consistent person, you will be able to make it through.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes me feel good too.
And it's
But yes, I remember every time you got a new caregiver, it was very stressful for you.
it was also, I think, so when people become protective of me, when I get new caregivers, it becomes stressful for them as well.
Exactly. Yes, that's very good insight. Yeah. Well, so Amy, I was just wondering, because I don't think we ever got the chance to talk, like, what is your very first memory of having physical therapy?
So it's been a long time since my very first memory. I've also done a lot of overseas physical therapy too.
Overseas? Oh yes, of
And
course. I forgot about that.
I think a lot of it is, I remember just being in a physical therapy room, speaking other languages as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my earliest memories of it.
Yeah. So wait, so let's talk about that. So that you went to, was it Denmark?
So I've been to Poland 10
Oh,
times.
Poland. That's right, Poland.
I also went to a physical therapy method called conductive education that
That's right. That's right.
the therapist came here
Right.
and they were they would come and teach their method here in the States.
Yes, and I in fact went one summer. I went over there while you were. That was somewhere in Fairfax, and I went and saw you do a conductive education course or session, and I learned a whole lot, which then we were able to kind of use some of that in the school system setting.
Yeah, and the other thing is keeping an open mind to other methods. So, like, I had some PTs very, very early who told my parents basically, don't take her to Poland, because it was out of their realm. And I think a lot of it is, as a PT or a PT student, you have to be ready to just be a sponge for stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had never heard of the conductive education method, and so it was very fascinating to me to learn about that and just to see the benefit of it.
I guess the easiest way to explain it is they don't really use all the like. We have so many safety mechanisms here. All their equipment is made out of wood, so we it's a little bit more of a sink or swim
Yeah.
method, which we couldn't use that when I was in high school or middle school, just because that probably would have been dangerous. But
Yes, the school might not have looked upon that with too much happiness.
we have to. They weren't as concerned about that,
Yeah.
so I was able to learn a lot from that too.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, one thing I remember, and I wanted to ask you to comment on, was when you were in 5th grade, your mom brought this walking frame and we put on like a vest and a pelvic, I guess, pelvic belt or something that would
pelvic pump, yeah.
and we would put you on that frame, and you just could sort of walk without having like to hold on to anything. You could swing your arms freely, and the thing I remember you saying about that was that you felt free.
Yeah. So as a kid, you're always looking for ways to feel normal,
Yeah.
and you're always looking for things to do that make you feel as like everyone else as possible. I loved that machine for what it was used for. It was basically an exoskeleton type thing.
An exoskeleton. Yeah, that's a good way to describe
Type
it.
thing that would help me walk around. There is a reason I don't use that anymore.
Too hard to get into.
It's just, if you're a young kid and you want to try it, try it. Have fun with it. But as you get older and as your needs change, you really need to be with trained people if you're gonna try something like that.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was holding one of my dog's leashes, not a service dog or anything.
Yeah.
He pulled me. I was in that machine.
Oh dear.
He pulled me and I went, oh no. So I kind
Wait,
of...
did you say, oh no, calmly like that? Or, oh no!
I screamed, basically. Because I wasn't prepared for it.
No. And there were no brakes on that machine.
So always, always, always use the machine with brakes.
Yeah.
Please.
On a level surface. Did he pull you down the driveway or anything like that?
Just down the hallway, and then I was able to stop him.
Oh, okay. So you were in the house. But still, yeah, that probably was a little concerning.
Fear is a thing.
Yeah.
So fear can hold anyone back, but I think especially if you're physically dependent on the rest of the world,
Sure.
it
Yeah.
can hold a lot of things back.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. No doubt. Okay, so some of your earliest memories of PT involved your conductive education.
Yeah, because I don't think I remember.
Like you probably, I mean, I would have to check with your mom, but you probably started with PT and OT when you were 2 or 3, probably, or younger.
The next thing I remember pretty much is the clap out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes. So do you want to talk about the clap out?
So, I don't know why. Growing up, I had a thing for when I graduated things or left things, I was going to walk like everyone else.
Which is a great goal.
So the clap out was basically elementary school graduation.
Yep.
And I walked it's been so long ago, 2 laps around the school with my classmates,
Yeah.
pushing my chair. Coach was behind me. I was able to hold myself up a lot easier then. No, my diagnosis is not progressive,
But you were smaller,
and
less weight to push
it's
and lift.
easier to hold less weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yes, exactly. And you didn't have as much of a hip issue when you were in 5th grade, if I'm remembering correctly. Does that seem to be true?
Yep.
Yeah, so that was a really cool thing. Amy stood behind her wheelchair. She held on to the handlebars in the back, and she almost used her wheelchair like a walker. And she walked around the school building, and I don't remember exactly how many times, but you did it with your peers, and it was a really awesome day.
Yeah, I had a lot of things for just wanting people to see me as a person
Yeah,
and not as a person in the chair.
yeah.
So it was very fun.
That was a big accomplishment for you.
Yeah. I was also walking outside too. I walked to my bus, and then Coach had to basically get me to sit down because when I'm up and when I feel safe,
Yeah.
it's really hard to sit back down.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when I'm up and I don't feel safe, all I want to do is sit back down.
Is that right? Yeah, because that's your safety. That's your comfort zone, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a great memory. I had forgotten about that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Well, and then middle school I know was tough for you. Do you want to talk about middle school?
Middle school was tough socially.
Socially?
Um,
Okay. More so than physically?
High school was,
Physically.
I always say middle school was socially tough. And it wasn't because of any of my aides. I had
You had wonderful aides.
phenomenal aides
Yes.
in there.
Yes, I agree.
I had some of those aides I'm actually still friends with, but and some of my middle school teachers I'm still friends with,
That's so great.
but I was very, very nervous in middle school because every middle schooler wants to fit in.
Yes, amen to that.
So I wanted to fit in too.
Yeah, of course.
And I think a lot of it came down to, am I in 6th grade? What grade am I in? Like, a lot of it was just trying to get through the hallways.
Yeah, yeah.
But-
And that really was, well, I guess in 5th grade you do some of that transitioning from classroom to classroom, but in 6th grade, that's when it really was like every class you had to transition in the
6th
hallway.
grade is when you start transitioning, so it's very difficult.
Yeah,
In middle school too, like I said, I had great assistants. We had a great team around me, and they were able to still transfer my hand because I wasn't big enough or scared enough, let me put it that way,
yeah.
for them not to handle me.
True. So we could still like manually help you up and move you from a chair to your stander or whatever.
Somehow Coach has always been able, until I graduated, at least to be able to transfer me. Not everyone can do that because not everyone's trained to do that.
Well, and honestly, I think it helped that I'm 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
I had leverage, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, geez, I remember in middle school, just like walking through the halls between classes was like the social moment of the day, right? Did this boy wave to me, or were those girls mean to me? Did they talk to me? And then, so not only did you have that, but you had just the concern about how am I physically going to be doing this?
How am I physically gonna get through without a backpack
Yeah.
going into my face? And a lot of it too was I had some classes as a 6th grader in the 8th grade hall.
Yes.
So
Oh
some
gosh,
of
I
them
remember
were
that.
very, very, very
It's intimidating.
I was scared.
Yeah, I
So-
don't blame you. I'm sure I would have been too.
My teachers started letting me transition without any kids in the hallway, so they started letting me just shift a couple minutes before the bell.
Did you like being able to do that, or did you want to?
Looking back at it, that's one of the safest things to do.
Yeah, okay. So although maybe you didn't want to, it would turn out to be a safer option.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so then high school was less socially demanding, but more physically demanding? Is that
Yeah,
what I'm
I
hearing
don't
you
know
say?
what happened.
Well, the school you were in didn't have the best hallways, period.
It's
It was a small hallway
It's-
school.
it's still kind of difficult for me to share
Oh.
a lot of that stuff just
Oh.
because when I was in school, when I got to high school, there was a lot of, I don't know what happened, maybe the IEP didn't go all the way through. There was just a lot of transitions that I wasn't really prepared for, and there was a bunch of basically I'm in my head trying to figure out a nice way of saying I had aides that were assigned to me probably because the school system was trying to find someone for me very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that resulted in some of the reasons why I do what I do now.
Well, and you
When I-
wrote a book about how best to help people in wheelchairs in the school situation.
So yeah, I did a little booklet
Booklet. Yeah.
that I don't know if they still have that because it's pretty much nowhere. But if you go into my channel, I did a video on like vocabulary to keep in mind when you're in school. Top 10 tips for transition, I think it's called.
Yes.
And
okay.
all that stuff is in that video that was initially in the booklet.
Okay.
I would say if you are in a position where you don't have the right help, don't be afraid to say something out loud. So, like I said, I was always like, please do not transfer me unless coach is here. And some of the assistants, I'm not sure you knew this, but some of the assistants would get mad at me
I kind of do remember that. Yeah.
for not letting them transfer me.
Yeah.
And they'd say, why?
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I didn't have the words. I wasn't strong enough to basically say, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I remember telling them that if there isn't that trust there, then that would make it physically harder because of that fear driving the increased muscle tone.
some of them would look at me and say, you help coach, why aren't you helping me?
So, yeah, so they were taking it as you were doing it on purpose, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I remember we were in the weight room one day and I said, Coach, I don't trust my aides. And I think that that's what, when I was finally able to come to you as a student, but also as a mentee,
Yeah.
and be able to trust you enough to say, hey, I'm not comfortable in this situation,
Yeah.
is when I was finally able to get myself some help.
Yes, you were learning self-advocacy in high school for sure.
Yeah.
Well, because I went from working with you almost, you know, what, 3 times a week in in elementary school and middle school to just once or maybe twice a week.
You went to consult basically.
Yeah, yeah. Because we were doing less like activities and less exercise, and it was more functional. How is Amy getting through her day, kind of a thing, and a lot of training your aides. But this is what I want to say, Amy. You trained me. Do you remember the first week I worked with you? I was like, what am I doing?
I don't remember too much of that because
I tell people this all the time. You knew exactly to tell me, you know, so lift this handle and you know, turn on that brake, and then when we had to move you into the stander, I think I worked with one stander in physical therapy school, like, you know, 10 years, 15 years before that day. So you told me exactly what to do, and I was like, thank you, Lord, for Amy being able to tell me all that.
And many years later, I am now teaching students from Ability Fitness how to do some of this crazy stuff, because the things that people learn in school is textbook.
Right.
I am not a textbook case
Well, that is true.
for anything.
You are Amy.
So people always look at me and they're like, that's not supposed to go that way. And I was like, yeah, that's a subluxation.
Oh, well, but you are such a good teacher. I was so appreciative of you. And that was when you were 10. You were teaching me how to work with all your equipment.
I remember I was a mentor for one of the other students who might be watching, who was then in preschool.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Ah.
Yes. I know, that was so great. Well, Amy, we've been talking a really long time. This is so good. I think maybe I asked one question that we just had a nice conversation.
Yeah, I kind of somehow knew, Coach, that this was going to turn into more of a conversation than anything else.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, anything else you want me to say or ask you?
We're going to turn the camera off so that we can just be...
Bye.
Bye.